All right, last video. I always refer to some movies sometimes. You remember Joe Dirt, the first one, the second one. Don't even waste your time. It was horrible. Joe Dirt 2, some kind of, what was it called? I forget. Horrible, worse than terrible. Don't even watch it. But the first one was great. And you remember when he told that girl, "Oh, I got a Hemi. I'm gonna go get my Hemi." Oh, she was all excited about his Hemi, and then he shows up with that piece of garbage clunker, smoking and piece of junk. And he pulls up. He's like, "Hey, get in." And she's like, "I thought you said you had a Hemi." I kind of want to use that line right now because I said in advance, experts, economists, new poll out the other day. New poll out, Le Pen of France, she's in second place now. The front runner is whatever the other guy's name is. And I said it right away. She's the Donald Trump of France. And the people have had enough everywhere. She's going to win. She also met with Donald Trump in Trump Tower. Remember that? I said disregard the polls. They're doing the same thing they did before. They have nothing to lose. They've already been discredited, so they're just going to keep doing it anyways. Fake the polls, fake the numbers, everything. So I said I don't care about any of that unless they can rig the election or something over there. She's going to win. The people want out of the EU. They're tired of the banksters. They're tired of the central bank telling them what they can and can't do and all that stuff. They want out. I told you she's going to win. So, speaking of, I thought you had a Hemi. I thought you had a poll. I thought you had a poll that said she was behind. What's this? Breaking news. Breaking news. Far-right National Front Party leader Marine Le Pen chances to win in the second round of the French presidential election increased both against independent candidates Emmanuel Macron and the Republicans candidate François Fillon. An OpinionWay poll has now shown Monday. What's that? Her chances just went up significantly? Oh, this is from Sputnik News. Le Pen is projected to gain 38% of the votes in case she stands against Macron, which is a 3% increase compared to just last Friday. Really? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, already up 3%? Wow, isn't that amazing? Last week, Macron caught up with the National Front leader in the polls, with both expected to receive 26% of the votes in the first round. However, the recent survey showed that the level of support for Le Pen has increased by 1%, while dropping by 1% for Macron, with his support rate amounting now to 25%. In case Le Pen's rival in the runoff elections is Fillon, she is still expected to lose. So either way, she's still expected to lose, receiving 43% against Fillon's 58%. However, since Friday, the positions of the far-right politician rose by 2%. Again, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days later, it's already up 2%. Whoa, what has happened? As regards the first round of election, Le Pen regained leading positions and is expected to receive 28% of the vote. The first round of the French president's election is slated for April 23rd, with the runoff between the top two candidates to take place on May 7th. So, I wonder how that's going to... Hillary Clinton has now a commanding lead. Polls are suggesting she's now up to 85% chance to win the presidency. It's pretty much over. She's got this in the bag, yada, yada. Breaking news. Donald Trump has won. Now cue the video clips of the millennials, the snowflakes, and whatnot, crying in utter shock and awe. That was Operation Shock and Awe, not Operation Shock and Awe in Iraq. Operation Shock and Awe, Donald Trump just won the 2016 elections, is what that was. So I thought you said you had a poll that showed she would not win at all. Now she gained a couple of 2-3 points in 3 days? Whoa, what happened? Did people mysteriously change their mind from Friday to Monday? Oh, I saw something over the weekend. I want to change my vote. Or again, are we having polling companies doing their damnedest to find the data that supports the other candidates and push that in front of our face, and they're struggling to find it? So they have to report this. And it's still showing her gaining. So the other day I was talking about, how all these countries in the European Union, they want out and yada, yada, yada. And I said Scotland now wants out. I've been a bit incorrect on that. Someone emailed me too. Hey, no, it's not that they want to leave the EU. They want to leave essentially the UK. They're actually part of the UK and want to, the UK's leaving through Article 50, which is supposed to happen, shortly here, where it's finalized. We are leaving the EU. But Scotland had a referendum in 2014, I believe, in which they said, do we want to be a part of the EU or not? And the referendum was, yes, we do. We want to be part of the EU. But what's happened today, or now, I should say not today, but recently, they understand the UK as a whole, we're leaving. Yeah, but we had a referendum in our own little small area of Scotland. In other words, a fraction of the percent of the population of the UK says, no, we want to stay. So we're having another referendum to kind of try to make that happen. And that's the equivalent of, 10% of your country saying we want Hillary Clinton to win, 90% saying we want Donald Trump to win, and then the 10% say, well, we're going to have a referendum and we may... I'm sorry, you're a part of this democracy? Yeah, listen, you're 10% to our 90%, obviously not even close, and even if it was close, it doesn't matter. Supposedly in a democracy, majority rules, right? In 90% against 10, we win. So that's kind of what's happening. So I do stand corrected a little bit. They're not trying to leave the EU. They're trying to leave the UK because they want to be with the EU somehow. Or they don't necessarily even want to leave the UK. They want to just remain in with the EU, but they can't. So now they're having to do this referendum, but with the UK, it's just a nightmare. So Sturgeon to give Mrs. May an ultimatum as UK prepares for a critical vote ahead of Article 50. Again, Article 50 is the finalization of the United Kingdom. We are officially leaving the EU zone. We are no longer a member. Britain's Minister for Leaving the European Union, this is from Zero Hedge, David Davis, urged lawmakers not to hold back Prime Minister Theresa May's ability to negotiate a Brexit deal in talks she could trigger as early as next week, or this week. Davis on Sunday called on lawmakers to vote to drop 2 amendments that were added to a bill authorizing the talks with the bloc's other member states, saying May should be able to enter with no strings attached, the Wall Street Journal reported. On Monday, the Brexit bill returns to the House of Commons, the UK's lower house, for debate after the House of Lords said it wanted guarantees that EU citizens living in the UK could stay after Brexit and that Parliament could vote on the final terms. The final bill must be approved by both houses. Should the bill pass Monday, the government could invoke Article 50 as early as Tuesday, according to weekend press reports, but negotiations in Parliament could last several days. The Brexit spokesman for the main opposition Labour Party, Keir Starmer, told Sky News he expects the government to trigger it on Wednesday or Thursday. Even if the House of Commons votes in favor of the amendments, May is expected to keep her timetable of triggering by the end of the month, but it will underline how small her majority is in the lower house. Complicating matters is a tweet moments ago by BBG political editor Laura Konsenberg, who reported that Scotland's Nicola Sturgeon will give May an ultimatum. Give Scotland a different Brexit deal, or she'll call for Section 30, the IndyRef process. And I'm not sure what actually that is, by the way. On the topic of Brexit, Reuters reported on Sunday that David Davis is also drawing up contingency plans for Britain in the unlikely event it has to walk away from divorce talks with the European Union without a deal, ahead of the start of Article 50 negotiations, which he could be triggered as early as Tuesday. A committee of lawmakers warned it would be a serious dereliction of duty of the government if the government failed to plan for the possibility of not reaching an exit deal. I don't think, firstly, that it's remotely likely, Davis told BBC. It's in absolutely everyone's interest that we get a good outcome. Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee warned that a breakdown in negotiations would be a very destructive outcome, causing economic harm to both sides, as well as creating uncertainty and legal confusion for individuals and businesses. The simple truth is we have been planning for the contingency, all the various outcomes, all the possible outcomes of the negotiations, he said. One of the reasons we don't talk about the contingency plan too much is we don't want people to think, oh, this is what we're trying to do. Asked when May would trigger talks, Davis declined to name a specific date. He said each date has different implications in terms of when it could be responded to by the European Council. I'm not going to get into the details why, but there's politics in terms of achieving success. And finally, for a frank, on the ground take on the current state of Brexit, here is an excerpt from Bill Blaine's latest Morning Porridge edition. The UK is going to get interesting. Apparently, it's going to be Article 50 week here in the UK. The risks of complacency are balanced against sterling jitters. As the UK becomes a prime target for global M&A, how much cheaper will the sterling get? I suspect the rebellious Scots to figure big in the looking uncertainty. As the Prime Minister gives formal notice we're divorcing Europe, expects all kinds of unpleasantness from wee Nicola Sturgeon across the border in Scotland. Although the last referendum was a once-in-a-generation event, the UK's democratic decision to exit Europe apparently means the question has to be asked again. Hang on. Scotland made a democratic decision to remain part of the UK on September 14, 2014. By remaining part of the single indivisible United Kingdom, Scotland accepted the democratic will of the whole polity. Yet Nicola Cranky makes the convoluted argument that since Scotland incidentally voted to stay in Europe in last year's Brexit referendum, then the whole nation of the UK's democratic choice is subordinated to the democratic choice of a small part of the polity. Really? By the same argument, I could argue that the democratic decision of the Blaine household is not to pay any more tax to the discredited Tory government. Does my personal democratic decision outweigh any decision the rest of you agree to? No. In September 2014, Scotland took the democratic decision to remain part of the democratic UK. End of argument. Nicola, shut the F up, he says. This morning, the camera crews were up in Edinburgh, where some Egypts were saying Brexit means independence. Come on, as a Scotsman, I can assure them as much as they dislike the English, they will dislike the Germans even more. Meanwhile, a well-spoken, concerned housewife was asking why England can't have Brexit while Scotland remains in. Stop. There's absolutely no way ever that Europe will allow Scotland to join. To do so would legitimize independence for Catalonia, Spain. Could trigger the risorgimento of Italy into a separate north and south, and even trigger a partial breakup of France. And just in case the S&P haven't spotted it, the move in oil prices since 2014 means the economic rationale for an independent Scotland has become darker than the deepest depths of the North Sea. Will the U.S. shale industry adjusting to long-term prices below $50 and becoming a net energy exporter, while the Saudis are forced to desperately sell whatever oil they can at whatever price they can get? There is simply no way in the medium term that oil prices justify the reinvigoration of the defunct Scottish oil base. Sure, Scotland has the brightest and best people in Europe, but most of us head down to London or elsewhere. So you can see there is turmoil all over the world right now, except you don't see it too much in America. But I got a sneaky suspicion you're about to see it come Wednesday. Debt ceiling, Federal Reserve, interest rates, markets, what's going to happen? Got a sneaky suspicion things are about to get a little interesting on this side of the pond. Take care.